Time Gate Moments. Welcome.
Ding ding ding.
Song sing song 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 sing sang song sing song sing song 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 sing song song sang sang song sing song sing song 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 sang song sing song sing song sing sang song 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 sing 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 song 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 sing song song sing song song song.
Hi there guys, you are watching The Earth is Flat 100% for sure, episode 19. So, welcome. Irashamase. Ni hao. Sodawo. Habari yako. Ahlan wa sahlan. Assalamu alaikum. La bienvenida. Namaste. Malo soifua. Now, many of the people that may be watching this video, whether a professor or student or enthusiast or some other person who's even knowledgeable about cosmology and astronomy, when we say gravity does not exist, you are probably thinking, what on earth is this guy talking about? Does he not know about X, Y, Z and A, B, C, D, E, F? And on the other hand, once you fully understand and comprehend the fact and reality that our Earth is flat and motionless, it will even become crystal clear to you, regardless of how staunch you may have been in opposition, or that you're just a skeptic, or you just don't care because you have not done sufficient research into this topic. Nevertheless, before we can jump into any conclusions, we must first consider these three basic, observable, experimentable, and realities of life and nature. The first of these is that do not confuse fallen objects with the so-called gravity, just like you would not confuse things going up from the earth to the sky with the so-called gravity. Think about that carefully. The second thing is you must understand that there is only up and down. It is either a horizontal terrestrial platform or you are going up vertically into the sky. There is no spinning globe earth in space. Forget it. That is 100% not true. The third basic and cosmographic reality you need to understand is that there is a natural law of density and buoyancy in nature and physics. We can assure you 100% that once you understand these three basic facts, you will come to the conclusion that the so-called gravity is a fake, fictitious, or fabricated force in order to promote and reinforce the globe earth and heliocentric, mediocre, and make-believe. So, the question is this: what on earth is gravity anyway? Here is a basic dictionary definition. Now, as you can see, we are being told that gravity is the force that attracts a body towards the center of the earth or towards any other physical body having mass. In other words, we are being told two things. Number one, things fall down on earth because of gravity, whether it's a rock or a rocket or an airplane, God forbid, or any other heavy objects coming down on earth. This all happens because of the so-called gravity. And the other thing we are being told here by this definition is that a larger body of mass is able to attract a smaller body of mass because of gravity. Now, just for a moment, think outside the box and ask yourself the question, if this is really true about gravity, how comes this massive terrestrial plane we know as Earth is not falling or collapsing on the sun or any other so-called planets? How comes? Likewise, how comes this massive CGI of Saturn? Look at the size of this thing. How comes this thing is not falling or collapsing on the sun because of the sun's so-called gravitational pull? How comes? What about the glorious moon, sometimes referred to as one of the local satellites? How comes? If the moon is really a land mass, a place, a platform, a solid platform that you can land on, as they say back in 69, if that's really the case, that the moon has dust, debris, craters, rocks, mountains, whatever, then how comes the moon is not falling or collapsing on the surface of the earth? How comes? Isn't gravity what makes things fall on the surface of the earth because of their mass? Take a look at this illustration and ask yourself the question, which is heavier, raindrops or the moon? Then how comes rain drops to the surface of the earth because of gravity, but the moon, which is much greater in mass compared to rain, stays in the sky? Does that make any logical sense? What's going on over there? The fact of the matter is this: the earth, despite its massive mass compared to the moon, has absolutely no gravitational pull or effect or impact on the moon whatsoever, just like the sun has no gravitational pull whatsoever on the earth or the moon or any other star system. So guys, before we dive into the main video, visuals, topics and argumentations, let us first identify where on earth is this madness of gravitation? Where is it coming from? So yes, here we go. Most of it, in terms of modern understanding, CGI and programming, it goes back to this guy here, Isaac Newton and his fellows back then. Hence is known as the Newtonian system of astronomy. So yes, so credit is given to him. Remember those pictures and images in books and what have you on posters where there was a guy sitting under a tree and then miraculously an apple falls on his head and then eureka, he discovered the law of gravitation, etc. Yeah, right. Anyway, since the good days of Isaac Newton, this stuff here, as well as a heap of all kinds of other things, have been relentlessly pumped into the media system, the publication, academic and schooling system, the television, films and cartoons system, and those many kinds of posters. You probably had a globe in your classroom, right? How on earth could they let you have missed out on that? However, the fact of the matter is this, and the majority of people seem to have completely missed the whole point, is that most of this, in fact 99.9%, is based on assumption, supposition and theory, as you can see from this extract sampled by Professor Airy in his lectures on astronomy, where he refers to Newton and the way he worked. As you can clearly see here, the basis or the premise of Newton's so-called discovery, as well as those who promote his theory, is that it's based on assumption and theory, not facts. In other words, this is like saying it could be like that, but we are really not sure. Take a look at this one here, just to show you real people, real professors, contemporaries, what they thought. This one is by Professor Bernstein in his letters to the British Association, where he identified the whole thing as a supreme illusion, as well as the most ridiculous theory to common sense and judgment. This is no joke. Likewise, we have this extract taken from A Million of Facts by Professor Richard Phillips, where he says, if the sun has any power, it must be derived from motion, and if acting on bodies at a distance, like Jupiter on his moons or the Earth on its moon, there must be an intervening medium to conduct its momentum through its systems. Now think about that carefully. We are talking about the findings, observation, and opinions of doctors, professors, teachers, real men and women, contemporaries, and others of that nature. Remember, these free thinkers and professors, they were never exposed to or subjected to today's CGI, optic illusion, and special effects from television, internet, and space agencies. So yeah, this is no joke. Flat earthers, if you want to call them that, they are not just saying things for the sake of media and this and that. Therefore, on one hand, it is really a waste of time to break a butterfly on a wheel. But on the other hand, as astronomy and all science, modern science, is beset with fancies about attraction and repulsion, it is necessary to try to eradicate them. Take a look at this experimental explanation in relation to gravitation and attraction. If there are two bodies and it is required to move A to C, the force moving A to C must proceed from the side A. Either some impact or some involvement of a motion towards C must act at A to carry A to C. The modern schools of astronomy, however, assert that B may move A to C and A move B to C, and this is mutual attraction. Hence, it is necessary to believe that B acts on the side A where B is not present, and that A acts on B on the side B where A is not present. In other words, A is required to be where it is not, and also be in force at A, so as to move B to C, all of which is absurd. If in any case A and B approach, it is not because A moves B towards itself or B moves A towards itself, but owing to some causes which affect the space in which A and B are situated, and which causes act on A at A and B at B. Fact. Think about this carefully. The statement that A moves B and B moves A is ignorance, and is what is meant by attraction. It is also worse than ignorance to justify idleness by asserting that the true cause is indifferent, or to justify ignorance by asserting that it is unknowable. This reasoning applies to every species of attraction, whatever may be the pomposity of equivocal terms in which it is described. Universally, bodies cannot push other bodies towards themselves. This is a fact. Let's take a look at another experimental example, this time with the addition of D, as you can see on the right hand side. If A and B are said to repel one another, and that B makes A move to C, and A makes B move to D, we have to bear in mind that while A is moving to C, it is in force only in that direction, and cannot therefore be moving B towards D. Likewise, while B is moving to D, it is in force only in that direction, and cannot therefore be in force in the contrary direction so as to move A to C. Every species or example and variety of attraction and repulsion are therefore absurd. The truth and reality is this: matter is in all cases the conductor of motion. If a body moves, it is because it is the patient of some sufficient momentum of body or matter acting on the side from which the body moves, and only in force in that direction. Some adopters of attraction talk by false analogy of drawing, others of pulling, lifting, etc. Laplace invents gravitating atoms and gives them a velocity of 6,000 times that of light, which in some way, known only to himself, performs the work of bringing the body in. Others imagine little hooks as to drawing, pulling, etc. It behoves them to show the tackle, the levers, the ropes, etc. How about this? Why don't you, after watching this video, go outside and try to experiment with these absurdities and assumptions? Why don't you try to get one object to gravitationally attract another object nearby? Go for it. It won't work. The only way it will work is that if you yourself push something towards something else. Hence, creationist, universal, intelligent design. The fundamental truth, and most of us know this deep down, is that when you push aside all the assumptions, inventions, optic illusion, fabrications such as gravitation, is that the realms and sky above us is created and is controlled by the Creator and His divine agency, and that the sun and the moon have been set into motion and operation in order to serve human beings down below on earth. Let us be objective though in acknowledging that every single human being, whether a cosmologist or otherwise, they wish to understand as much as they can, and of course sometimes in different ways, what on earth is going on upstairs, who or what is up there. For example, many people, they want to know if there are aliens. Are there other places and locations up there or out there? Is there a life after death? Where do people go to when they die? Will I ever see and reunite with my loved ones again? What is the purpose of life on earth, etc., etc.? Many human beings say that the answers to those questions and inquiries is most likely upstairs. Our exploration, our curiosity, our development is what makes us human. It is therefore very important that you understand and keep in mind what we are criticizing here in this video is not human exploration and science, but the fictitious law of universal gravitation and attraction. Let us further entertain a few more extracts to get a concrete idea of what gravity really is. You see, guys, we can keep going on and on. Anyway, on a personal level, 3 of the things that prompted me to become a flat earther were: number 1, carefully observing the sun; second, looking at the stars through the telescopes; and the third was the Antarctic Treaty 1959. After researching the controversies, the talks, the purpose and the reason why the Antarctic Treaty was created, that was really the nail in the coffin for sure. Some other people become suspicious when they try to figure out why is it that they never see or feel the earth to be spinning. How comes? They are being told, but they never see it or feel it. Why? One other thing that was really odd was that throughout the entire internet and video system, there was not one single video where the entire earth has been filmed at 360 degrees from space with one continuous camera footage. Not a single video. You see, you can go and check this out for yourself. Now you have to ask yourself a question. Is that really by coincidence? Or is it because nobody has really been to space? You probably still think this is some kind of a joke, don't you? Don't you? Put it this way. Gravity is none other than a magical, fictitious, dubious, and imaginary force that has been created and reinforced by and for modern cosmology. It is very similar to the Coriolis effect, you see, in order to conceal or deny the real force and divine agency that is behind the sun, the moon, the stars, and the rest of the celestial system upstairs. The forgery and teaching of gravity in modern cosmography, whether by accident or intentional, is one of the crimes of the utmost gravity. One of the ways that this is achieved is by using optic illusion and CGI in order to create the illusion of great distant suns, moons, stars, planets, and other objects, as well as their massive sizes, in contrast to this tiny globe Earth that is supposedly spinning in the middle of nowhere. This is all CGI, make-believe, and pure science fiction. The truth is more terrifying than fiction. Indeed, indeed. We can assure you 100% that the sun is a local light that is exclusively operating above the earth, that the sun has absolutely no gravitational pull on the earth whatsoever, and that the sun is much, 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 much smaller than the earth, for sure, over 1,000 times indeed. Yes, this sounds ludicrous and outlandish even if you are watching it for the first time. Nevertheless, this is the absolute truth. Put it this way, perhaps this is one of those topics and subjects you may have never looked at seriously before, and in this way. So the real question is this: if there is no gravity and the sun has no gravitational pull on the earth or the moon, then how do we explain why things fall to the earth, or rise up to the sky, or remain suspended in the sky, such as the sun, the moon, the stars, etc., etc.? How comes the stars remain in levitation and in their perfect order and celestial system? This is very simple. First and foremost, in relation to the 3 basic factors we mentioned earlier, you must understand and try to consider as objectively as you can that the sun is not 93 million miles away from the earth, nor is the moon 250,000 miles away from the earth, but rather they are both local lights which are exclusively serving and operating above the earth in circulation from the east to the west every single day. Take a look at this video here. If you still have a fully functioning eyeballs and common sense, you can clearly see the sun is running across the sky. The nighttime is literally chasing the daytime and vice versa because of the motion of the sun. This relationship between the earth and the sun has absolutely nothing to do with the fictitious and dubious law of gravity. Nothing. But of course, this will be further clarified as we continue with the video.
Then for the next 3 months again, every day the sun continued to slightly widen its path and hasten its speed until the winter solstice, when the sun made its largest, fastest circle around the Tropic of Capricorn, and the annual journey began again. The moon had a similar yearly path revolving over and around the earth, but unlike the sun, which constantly changed its speed to keep a consistent 24-hour day, the moon's speed never changed. So depending on its latitude, the moon was observed then, as we can observe today, to take approximately 24.7 to 25 hours per cycle. This is why at different times and places during each month, we can see the moon in the morning, afternoon, or night.
So, that's the earth for now. But what about upstairs? Remember those images, pictures and illustrations, whether in a textbook or by some professor somewhere, where you were told the stars are these gigantic, billions of miles away planetoids? Well, that is not entirely true, as you can see right here. However, in modern heliocentric cosmology, which is obsessed with gravity, this is what you are shown, the magic and thematics of CGI. Jupiter is neither a planet nor is it this big. Forget it. This is the reality right here, as you can see with your own eyes. You take your pick, whether it's Jupiter or Saturn or Ash-Sha'ra or At-Tariq or Venus. You see, these are the stars right here, whether fixed or wandering stars. You see, they are neither millions or billions of miles away, nor do they have any gravitational impact or pull on the Earth or the Moon or the Sun or on each other. And likewise, the so-called billions of miles away galaxies and what have you are none other than grouped stars or clusters or constellations, which are like chandeliers inside and within the celestial dome upstairs. How about this? Would you really accept it if we told you that this scattered image is a galaxy that is 5, 7, 10 light years away? How about this one? Could this one perhaps be 100 billion light years away? Well, this is how optic illusion, CGI, and the fictitious law of gravity work hand in hand. So now we have identified and separated the optic illusion and the CGI from the real things. So let's get back to our 3 basic factors as mentioned earlier. And by the way, whoever you are, thanks a lot for watching. Your patience is worth a great deal. Please share this video and pass it on. On the premise and preemptive nature, in line with your preconditioned and in-the-box mental processes and heliocentric concepts, one of your major questions would be, then how and why do things fall down towards the earth if there is no gravity? And the answer to that question, or any other questions like that, is very simple. You must understand that the earth is the only floor or surface to our universe, the sky above. The earth is the floor, the ground, the base. The sky is the ceiling, the roof. And in these parameters, dimensions and space between the sky and the floor, the only reality is that there is up and down. There is no globe earth is spinning and rotating in the middle of nowhere, somewhere in space. Forget that for sure. If, for example, you are living in Canada or residing somewhere in Northern Europe, Australia is not down under. It's just on the other side of the terrestrial flat earth plane, some 8,800 miles away. You cannot fly beneath the earth or below Antarctica, as they show you on those spinning ball earth examples in modern heliocentric cosmology. because of gravity or some other illogicality. Right at this moment, as expected, some of you are thinking, "Oi, mate, what's the matter with you, mate? Are you having a laugh? Have you gone bananas or what, mate? You can't say that, mate. Are you thick? What's the matter with you, mate? Oi, Dave, Barry, Trevor, hear this geezer here. He's saying the earth is not footy shaped, mate." He said what? What's the matter with you, mate? You know what, mate? I think you are looking for some trouble, mate. Oi, Steve, you look like you know how to read, mate. What do you make about this geezer? You know what, mate? I think I smell a rat. Can you smell it? I'm not sure what he's on about too, mate. Oi, Barry, you look like you got some yeast in your loaf, mate. Have you got anything to say about this geezer, mate? You know what, mate? I can't be bothered, mate. As long as he's not saying the match between West Ham and Wolverhamptonshire has been cancelled next week, I just can't be asked, mate. However, the people of truth and those who want to see things from a different perspective because of the reality that is observable around them are thinking, perhaps these guys are onto something. There is something there, something. Men and ladies and aliens, the main emphasis and point we are trying to substantiate here is that the falling of objects from whatever height at whatever velocity has absolutely nothing to do with the so-called gravity. Nothing. Likewise, the dropping or plunging of objects in water is completely independent from the so-called law of gravity, which has been pushed in by force in order to explain something that even your children always knew as the basic, obvious, and default reality of nature. The fact of the matter is this, as well as the observable reality: the relationship between fallen objects from any height in the sky and the rate at which they fall, known as terminal velocity, is regulated by the natural law of density and buoyancy. This is a rudimentary principle in nature which operates and functions by default. So, gentlemen and ladies, this is the basic definition of what density means in terms of physics and modern science. As you can see here, density can be determined by dividing the mass with the volume. In other words, in everyday language, it just means how dense the object is or how compact it is in terms of mass and volume. Regular examples would be, for example, a brick versus a lifebuoy. The brick would be more dense than the lifebuoy, even though the lifebuoy is much more larger in terms of size and volume. Now, the natural physics or understanding of buoyancy is that it is the opposite to density. It means how light, weightless, buoyant, or immaterial objects and elements are against their surrounding environment. For example, a lemon will drop in the air but float in water, which means the lemon is too dense against the element of air, but too buoyant against the element of water. Therefore, it floats. It has absolutely nothing to do with the so-called gravity, but it has everything to do with what the lemon is composed of. This basic lemon and water experiment shows us that the reason why lemons float in water is because they contain air and fiber tissue, which are lighter than the water. Another more profound example is that your body, your physical body, is a creature of density, whereas your soul, which is immaterial, is originally from heaven. Hence, when the person dies, the soul has to go up. Take a good look at these clouds. They can neither come down nor go any further up. Why? Because they are occupying or existing in their equilibrium state, where density and buoyancy are equal. If the clouds were heavier, they would come down a bit. If they were lighter, they would go up a bit, but they cannot, because this is how Allah has designed them. At this equilibrium state, suspended between earth and sky in relation to their substance or composition. This is why the so-called gravity has no effect or impact on these clouds. The reason is because this is all designed on the fundamentals of density and buoyancy. Another good example, as you can see here, is that water in the form of rain has to drop in the air. Now, the purpose and reason why rain comes down onto the earth, that's another explanation altogether. However, in terms of physics and the natural law of D and B, water has to drop in the air. Why? Because water is heavier and more dense than the air in the sky. Isn't this so obvious? And likewise, and exactly likewise, only that this time it is the opposite. As you can see here on this example, water bubbles have to rise up in the water. Why? Because water bubbles contain air, aka oxygen, which is a form of gas, which is much lighter than water and has no density. Therefore, the water bubbles have to rise up to the surface in order to escape and rejoin the atmosphere. This is the state or elevation to which the air will rise up to. The natural buoyancy, height or suspension for air, oxygen and vapors is the troposphere. If no one ever said anything to you about gravity, this is how you would observe and determine the natural world around you. Fact. Let's take another example. Now, in this illustration, if these objects were all thrown from the sky from the same height, the object with the most density in relation to its volume, perhaps in this case the car or the brick, will have the greatest terminal velocity and therefore hit the earth first with the most pressure and impact. Similarly, the lightest object or the most flimsy, in this case the feather, will take the longest to land. Why? Because of its deficiency of density or mass in relation to its volume. Think. It has absolutely nothing to do with gravity, for sure. The heavier the object or element, the lowest it will descend. The lighter the object or element, the higher it will occupy in the sky. Take a good look at this balloon demo. First, there's the plunge from height, and then the balloon has to find its density to buoyancy state in relation to the water volume, and then it begins to float. How comes the fictitious law of gravity is not forcing it down? Let's take a good look at these snow fluffs, which are even lighter than feathers. Nevertheless, they have to come down gradually. Why? Because they contain water, which is heavier than the air in the sky, only that this time the descent is much slower than raindrops. The only way to defy, and we repeat with emphasis, as you can see here on this machine or airplane, the only way to defy the natural physics or the law of density and buoyancy is by the usage and development of mechanism, aviation and energy, or fuel and turbine-based locomotive. If the dubious and imaginary force of gravity really exists, this airplane right here should be collapsing onto the earth, regardless of the mechanism and turbine systems it is utilizing. Shouldn't objects of mass in the air get pulled down to the earth down below because of the invisible force and attraction of gravity, right? Well, no. The reason why things fall down onto the earth and only towards the earth is because the earth is the base, the floor, the ground, the lowest platform, the only surface to our universe, or the sky. Now the sky is the opposite. It is the ceiling, the roof, the upstairs, the place where things naturally descend from. Just like the ceiling of your house, which has a floor, there is no globe earth spinning somewhere and nowhere. What you are watching here and listening to is the absolute truth. Birds are amongst the best demonstrators of organic mechanism and aviatory aerodynamics simulation. If birds consisted of the same elements as clouds, they would not have needed wings or flyability. However, since they are creatures of density, the only way to resist or defy the natural law of up and down or density and buoyancy is through aviation and the capability to self-propel. Guys, do not confuse or mix up the natural formation and strata of earth to sky vertical dimension and the natural physics of density and buoyancy with the fictitious, unobservable, unexperimentable and dubious force or attraction of gravity. Forget it 100% for sure. We can assure you 100% that gravity does not exist and cannot and has never been observed in nature. Check this one out. In this video, besides the human interaction or the hand action, do you think this tiny ball here, because of gravity, should be attracted by the force of gravity of this larger ball as a consequence of having a greater mass? The answer is simply no. But how comes? Why not? Let's go back to our definition. The force that attracts a body towards the center of the earth or towards any other physical body having mass. How about this one? Why isn't this giant ball or globe earth example be attracting the sun grains in the same way supposedly the sun attracts the earth and the many planets out there? You see, that is how ludicrous gravity is in reality. How is it this tiny bird is able to hover against the powerful pulling down of the so-called force of gravity? There has never been an experiment in nature where a physical object, by virtue of mass, has exerted gravitational pull of another object towards itself. William Carpenter said, if the earth was a globe, people, except those on the top, would certainly have to be fastened to the surface of the earth by some means or other, whether by the attraction of astronomers or by some other undiscovered and undiscoverable process. But as we know that we simply walk on the surface of the earth without any other aid than that which is necessary for locomotion on a plain earth, it follows that we have indeed a conclusive proof that the earth is not a globe. And this guy here knows that. Because of his density, he's just stuck on earth. Well, unless he can sort something out, like fixing a propane canister to a balloon and then just take off. For the time being though, he will just have to sleep on it. Din 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 din. 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 Yeah 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 yeah. Let's go back to the elementary table for a moment, otherwise known as the periodic table. Now, in that classification of elements, we find hydrogen, which is a form of gas. And as you can see on this example answer, hydrogen is considered to be one of the lightest, if not the lightest element known to man. Perhaps only angelic or malaika and other celestial agents are more lighter and more refined than hydrogen and neon, because we are told they are created and formed from light as opposed to anything else. Helium is another popular gas or element. You may have heard this name in your science, physics and biochemistry classes, as well as other general studies. Now, as you can see on this sample here, helium is renowned for its properties such as buoyancy, non-combustibility, and as a lifting agent, say for balloons as well as other usages. In many parts of the world, or at least wherever they are still flying hot air balloons, they still use propane gas, which is a type of alkaline liquefied petroleum gas. However, in the United States, where this activity is still quite popular, as you can see from this sample snapshot, they use helium or hydrogen as the lifting gas. This is because both gases are lighter than air. Both gases or elements are lighter than air. Remember, so far we have been discussing the natural physics and law of density and buoyancy. Water and ice have to come down in the air because of their density-related factors, which makes them heavier than the air. Likewise, helium and hydrogen have to rise up in the air because of their buoyancy-related factors, which makes them lighter than the air. This natural and primordial regulator between the sky and the earth, or up and down, has absolutely nothing to do with the fictitious and so-called force and attraction of gravity. Nothing. It is a conclusive, substantiatable, and concrete fact that in reality the so-called force of gravity does not exist. This is for sure, 100%. Let's just say the notion of gravity is very, very necessary for the secularization of the sky in our modern times. Just like the Big Bang is very necessary for the theory of evolution, just like the moon landing fakery is very necessary for the globe Earth worldwide mediocre. If what you are seeing here does not convince you, it means you probably prefer the delusions. Hence, the truth is more terrifying than fiction. Think about this carefully. How is it nowadays, because of the development of zooming capability, people are zooming in into the so-called planets such as Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, and they are realizing these are not planets after all. They are just stars. And of course, as always, if there are Muslims watching this video or following this channel, etc., you are referred to chapter 37, verse 4, as well as many other parts of the Quran where this is referred to. رَبُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا وَرَبُّ الْمَشَارِقِ. That's a quotation of chapter 37, verse 4. Now, just to go back to our exposition regarding hydrogen and helium in terms of their buoyancy and the fact that they are both forms of gases. Now, take a quick look at this sample here in terms of modern heliocentric cosmology and other interpretations of that nature. Here, we are being told that hydrogen and helium are always escaping from the Earth's atmosphere into space. Now, think about this carefully. Logic, reason, science, physics, biochemistry, and our natural understanding tell us that in order to maintain or sustain gas, they have to be inside a container. Remember those industrial containers and canisters used to contain propane, butane, and LPG gases. Therefore, the logical conclusion, as well as our understanding through science, experiment, observation, and reasoning, is that in order for hydrogen, neon, helium, nitrogen, and the many other forms of gas to exist in our atmosphere, there has to be a closed-off system. The main relationship, or the thing that these elements and substances have in common, is that they are all weightless, buoyant, and even formless. And having such a nature, it means they have to occupy or exist in the upper part of our atmosphere. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. It has been great to have you on board all the way here. We hope and anticipate by now you are a 50% flat earther for sure. Anyway, we are at the last part of our video presentation, and we are going to look at and examine the three different types of aviation, technology, and energy. Two of them are original, and the third is an imitation. So what exactly are we talking about here? We are talking about the only three ways to defy the natural physics, dimensions, and height in relation to density and buoyancy. This guy here is the main highlight of the entire video. In terms of the theme and argumentation, however, he made it very clear earlier that he has absolutely nothing to do with this one, for sure. Anyway, the three different types of aviation and mechanism is: number one, natural mechanism and flyability; second, man-made aviation; and third, celestial engineering and energy. So the first way to defy the natural physics of density and buoyancy is, as you know, is the mechanism utilized by birds, insects, and bees, and this is known as self-propelling capability. The second area of achieving this is through man-made aviation, technology, innovation, creativity, which again are all based on birds, bees, dragonflies, and fish, known generally as biomimicry or bioimitation. And what the man-made mechanism and innovation have in common with the organic version of birds, insects, bees, dragonflies, and fish, regardless of any advancement, is that they still require fuel and energy, whether it's coal, petroleum, electricity, solar derivative, hydrology, and even firewood in order to initiate and sustain flight. It is really all based on the natural inbuilt mechanisms of birds, insects, and fish. They have to eat and drink in order to fly or float. There's no such thing as flying an airplane without petrol, electricity, or some other energy source. The third area of aviation and mechanism capability is the celestial technology, engineering, and energy. And this applies to what keeps up and in elevation the stars, the sun, the moon, and any other celestial object and element for whatever the purpose, for however long, and for whatever the reason. Just like we use creativity, mechanism, gas, electricity, diesel, and other means to keep objects and machines up in the sky, likewise, the stars, the moon, the sun, and the many other objects and elements in the heavens are being kept up and sustained and in elevation by celestial technology, engineering, and energy for whatever the purpose, for however long, and for whatever the reason. This may include technology and energy such as plasma, electricity, nuclear, and proton fusion. Why is it so difficult to understand and comprehend? Just as we design, create, assemble, and launch and keep airplanes and helicopters in the sky by way of mechanism, electricity, and petrol. Likewise, the Creator and His creating agency keep up and sustain the sun, the moon, and the stars with their own technology, motion, energy, and driving factors. Only that this technology and energy is exempt from human error and shortage. How the sun, the moon, and the stars are kept up in suspense in the sky, or the capability of how that is achieved, has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the so-called fictitious and quasi force of gravity. Nothing. We are talking pure technology, electromechanism, and primordial creativity of a higher force and agency. You must understand, even though it's so simple and obvious to do so, that just as this plane here is flying, maintained through mechanism and electricity, likewise is the moon here. Just like this great machine, if the ignition, mechanism, and the controls were switched off, likewise, the moon here would simply collapse on the earth. It is as simple as that, guys. You know what? One of these days, preferably on a semi-cloudy day, go outside and observe the sun objectively, sincerely, and carefully, and ask yourself the question, is it really 93 million miles away from the earth? Really? To further substantiate this area of things, in case there are Muslim individuals or audience watching this video somewhere, we have this verse from chapter 39 of the Noble Quran, and it reads like this: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم خلق السماوات والأرض بالحق يكور الليل على النهار ويكور النهار على الليل وسخر الشمس والقمر كل يجري لأجل مسمى ألا هو العزيز الغفار. Now a basic translation of this verse is, He created the heavens and the earth for purpose. He wraps up the night over the day and the day over the night. He subjected the sun and the moon, each running or operating for an appointed term. Is He not the most powerful, the ever forgiving? And of course, there are other parts of the Quran where these aspects of cosmology are referred to. But for this case here, the bit we are most interested in is this bit right here, that Allah is telling us that He has subjected the sun and the moon, each operating or functioning for an appointed term. This is literally referring to not just for human service, but also the technology, the self-propelling, the mechanism, the inbuilt driving factors that the sun and the moon utilize during their 24-hour seasonal and annual service, operation, and rotation above and across the earth. This has absolutely nothing to do with the so-called gravity, but everything to do with the technology, the self-propelling, and the permanent combustion system that has been built into the sun to keep it at permanent suspension whilst in motion above the earth. So yeah, those are the only three ways for things, objects, and life forms to stay above the ground in relation to density and buoyancy against the reality of up and down. Guys, the point is this: gravity in reality does not exist. It is either mechanism, aviation, or advanced technology, or we just have to stay down here because of density. The stationary flat earth cosmography is real, and it remains as the original reality without any change. And the thing is, as a human being, you already know this subconsciously. In fact, there's no need for red and blue pills or even paracetamol. You can investigate, research, study, observe, and see for yourself. The only difference is that you are living in the age of optic illusion and television. Guys, people, humanity, there's no such thing as people living on the other side of the world upside down, and vice versa, on a globe that is supposedly spinning at 1,000 miles an hour in the middle of nowhere. That is 100% a fabrication as a result of optic illusion, make-believe, and mind control. The earth is a unique place. The fact of the matter, the truth and reality is that every single house, village, town, city, nation, continent and ocean exist on the surface of this tremendous, expansive, flat earth terrestrial plane that stretches across from one side to the other side. The so-called force of gravity is none other than a pseudoscientific assumption and tool that is necessary to hold together the globe Earth heliocentric modern narrative. Dr. Parallax said, if, therefore, it can be shown that gravitation is a pure assumption and an imagination of the mind only, that it has no existence outside of the brains of its expounders and advocates, the entire hypothesis of this modern so-called science fall to the ground as flat as the surface of the ocean. And this most exact of all the sciences, this wonderful feat of the intellect, becomes at once the most ridiculous superstition and the most gigantic imposture to which ignorance and credulity could ever be exposed. Here is an interesting statement. Those who proclaim the flat earth reality never claimed to have landed on the moon. Why? Because they know for sure you can neither land on the moon nor are you allowed to do so. You see, however, on the contrary, the so-called moon landing theater had to be dramatized in order to set the premise for the modern spinning globe Earth. And as always, the rest is history. Think very, very carefully about some of the things you have seen on this video as well as in other similar documentaries. Anyway, once again, thanks a lot for watching. See you very soon for another great video. Take care. La 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 la.